William Ruto and is now sacked CS Justin Muturi. Deepened further when the head of state described his former CS as an incompetent public servant. Dr. Ruto says Muturi's incompetence as Attorney General had delayed the creation of a Muslim endowment fund. And as Brenda Wanga tells us in the following report, Muturi fired back at his former boss, clarifying that the Waqf Act did not have provisions for an endowment fund.
I had a problem with the AG who was there. He was fairly incompetent, but I now have a very competent lady.
President William Ruto, speaking at a Muslim faithful's iftar dinner at State House, berated Justin Muturi as an Attorney General, blaming him for the delay in setting the Muslim Endowment Fund, Waqf, that had been proposed by Muslim leaders. Muturi's response came first through his X page. He points out that the Waqf Act of 2022 has no provision for a Muslim endowment fund. Muturi further explains that a Waqf is a religious, charitable or benevolent endowment by a person who professes Muslim faith and is managed by the Waqf Commission. The Waqf Act came into force in March of 2022 but is yet to become operational. Muturi maintains that he followed the proper procedure in his attempt to operationalize that act through a series of events. In July 2023, through a Gazette notice, Muturi appointed the Waqf Commissioner's selection panel and subsequently wrote to the National Treasury and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission seeking a budget for the panel. 9 months later, in April 2024, the selection panel held its first meeting and was sworn into office a month later. On the 11th of June, Muturi advertised for candidates for the position of members of the Waqf Commission. The process of shortlisting the candidates commenced after the deadline of submitting applications.
Today, decided to dismiss with immediate effect all the cabinet secretaries and Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya, of the Cabinet of Kenya.
Muturi says the sacking of the cabinet halted this process, which he claims has not moved since he left that docket. The Waqf tiff between the president and his now former CS, however, is a continuation of the divergent paths that the head of state and his subordinate have been working for the past few months. The fallout between Ruto and Muturi was born of the abductions and forced disappearances that followed the anti-government protest last year. Muturi's son was one of those abducted by what he termed as state operatives.
I'm calling upon you now to order an end to these abductions, which you promised, killings, extrajudicial killings, and an open inquiry to inquire into how these things have been happening. We cannot make it normal.
Muturi has openly called out the president on what he termed as government's complicity in the abductions that have often ended in deaths and maiming of young Kenyans.
Resignation for me would be an act of cowardice.
Yeah.
People wonder, what kind of person is this one who sees a problem, doesn't speak about it, and merely walks away? It will look very cowardly on my part.
Wednesday's government reorganization has effectively taken that option away from him as he becomes the latest victim of the anti-establishment purge by the executive. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
The redeployment of senior officials who have been